You don't belong on that bench." Detective Ryan Crawford shouted, his voice echoing with intensity as he delivered a swift kick to Judge Diane. Mitchell took a hard hit to the stomach right there in open court. But that kick marked the instant that heralded the beginning of the end for a career constructed upon deception and bloodshed. This was more than merely an attack on a black judge. It was the moment when someone finally crossed the line in front of the wrong individual. Crawford had no inkling of the woman he had just encountered, had been quietly reviewing files that certain individuals were eager to keep hidden for all eternity, including video evidence pertaining to a case that shattered families and concealed the execution of a black teenager. What began as a routine criminal court session transformed into the catalyst for a federal investigation, revealing deep-seated corruption within the highest levels. Watch until the conclusion, for this time, when the system endeavored to shield its own murderous officers, the entire narrative unfolded. The foundation cracked, and what followed transformed everything for those who believed that taking the lives of black children was permissible. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Courtroom 7A in Riverside County, casting elongated shadows across the floor. In the Criminal Justice Center, the weathered wooden benches bore silent witness to decades of families yearning for justice in their most desperate moments. Vulnerable. But this Tuesday morning would be different. This would be the day when 15 years of systematic racism would ultimately detonate in the presence of the misguided individual. Judge Diane Mitchell recalibrated her wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose as she meticulously reviewed the case file that had haunted her sleepless nights for 3 long days. The document in her hands appeared to be ordinary at first glance, a mere formality for a 15-year-old black girl. Kesha Williams has been charged with disorderly conduct and threatening behavior directed at a law enforcement officer. The accusation articulated in the same detached language she had encountered countless times prior depicted a child who had reportedly exhibited confrontational behavior and declined to adhere to legal requests. Commands delivered with a sense of respect. Yet, Judge Mitchell had developed an acute ability to discern the underlying truths within the police reports, particularly those marked by the distinctive touch of Detective Ryan Crawford. At the age of 48, he brings with him 22 years of legal expertise. Behind her, she had cultivated an instinct for discerning patterns that others chose to overlook, and Crawford's name lingered in the air. Had been showing up in her courtroom with unsettling regularity, consistently involving black teenagers, always with the same ambiguous accusations consistently framed in a manner that demonized typical teenage conduct. Kesha occupied the front row, her school uniform impeccably pressed and neat, a stark contrast to the circumstances surrounding her. Her hands rested, folded in her lap, with the measured grace of a child who understood that survival frequently hinged on rendering herself as diminutive and as gentle as can be. Her mother Angela Williams wrapped a protective arm around her daughter's shoulders while grasping a folder filled with honor roll certificates, teacher recommendations, and community service awards, proof of a child whose only transgression was existing while black in Detective Crawford's patrol area. Just wait until you see what unfolds. Crawford states that when he comprehends the true identity of his opponent, the courtroom door swung open with a purposeful intensity, the sound of brass echoing through the space. Hinges groaned in protest as Detective Ryan Crawford made his entrance. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches, he possessed a solid build that commanded attention. Came from years of tactical training, Crawford filled the doorway like a man stepping onto his own personal stage. The dark blue uniform was pressed to military precision, the weight of his duty belt and service weapon creating the unmistakable confidence of an individual who had never truly faced the scrutiny of civilian authority. Crawford's pale gray eyes roamed the courtroom, exuding a practiced arrogance that lingered on Kesha with a chilling assessment of a hunter who had located his prey. As his eyes moved to Judge Mitchell, a brief spark ignited. Across his expression lingered a nuance, neither outright disrespect nor full acceptance, but rather the subtle dismissiveness of a man who regarded black with a certain detachment. Women in positions of authority perceived as temporary obstacles rather than genuine threats. Judge Mitchell witnessed this performance with the calm assurance of one who had devoted years to observing men akin to Crawford assert their superiority through subtle gestures and thinly veiled disdain. She had observed this specific type of arrogance had previously taught me to identify the unmistakable signs of officers who thought their badges conferred upon them an unassailable authority, immunity from consequences. Yet, what Crawford remained unaware of, what he could never have anticipated as he took his place in the witness chair, there was an air of casual ownership about him, a testament to the fact that Judge Mitchell had been meticulously constructing a case against him for months past, and within her private files lay a manila folder, harboring evidence capable of obliterating not only his career but the vast web of deceit that had shielded him during his 15-year campaign of oppression against black youth in Riverside County. His forthcoming words are poised to astonish you beyond comprehension. The stillness in courtroom 7A carried an unusual weight. This morning, imbued with a palpable tension reminiscent of the moments before a storm, Crawford positioned himself in the witness stand, seated like royalty upon his throne, blissfully ignorant of the impending confession that would lead him to federal prison for the rest of his life. "Detective Crawford," Judge Mitchell began, her voice carrying the measured weight of authority. "The authority of an individual who has earned respect through skill and knowledge rather than through fear. Please detail the circumstances surrounding Miss Williams's arrest." Crawford reclined a bit in the witness chair, a subtle movement that would have been understated were it not for the setting, in a courtroom where reverence, the essence of judicial authority, was rooted in even the slightest manifestations of nonchalance, held considerable importance. "Your Honor, I was on a standard patrol in the East Side District when I noticed a gathering of young individuals lingering by the Metro bus stop at 5th and Henderson, in light of recent reports concerning drug-related activities in the area. I chose to carry out a community wellness check." Judge Mitchell took careful note, her pen gliding across the page, intentionally across the legal pad as her thoughts navigated the well-worn euphemisms of a community wellness check, Crawford's favored terminology for what civilian observers might characterize as the intimidation of teenagers who had committed no offense other than awaiting public transportation while black. And how many minors were included in this group? There were 5 individuals in total, 4 males and 1 female, all seemingly aged between 14 and 17 years of age, yet only Miss Williams faced arrest. Can you clarify the reasoning behind this? That decision, for the first time, caused Crawford's confident demeanor to waver ever so slightly. He cast a glance toward the prosecutor's table, perhaps anticipating a measure of support that never materialized, shifted his focus back to the judge. As I drew near, the other subjects scattered without hesitation, while Miss Williams exhibited a demeanor that needed further intervention. However, this was not Crawford's initial instance of focusing on black teens in Judge Mitchell. In her private chambers the previous evening, Judge Mitchell had laid out Crawford's case files before her desk, resembling fragments of a troubling puzzle. The pattern was unmistakable: 17 arrests in. Over the course of the past 18 months, 16 black teenagers have been charged with various offenses. Chaotic actions or menacing demeanor. The wording in his reports was strikingly uniform, as though he were following a blueprint crafted to demonize typical adolescent reactions. During police encounters, Marcus Johnson, 16, was arrested for what was deemed aggressive eye contact, the inability to promptly adhere to spoken instructions. Destiny Parker, 15, accused of conveying animosity through gestures and vocal inflection. Trevor Williams, not to be confused with Kesha, a 14-year-old, was taken into custody for having clenched fists, suggesting a likelihood of aggression. Every instance had been negotiated down through plea bargains or dismissed due to technicalities, guaranteeing the methods employed by Crawford remained largely unchallenged. Yet, a singular name surfaced within Crawford's records that sent chills down Judge Mitchell's spine as Malik Thompson, just 16 years old, pulled the trigger. Lost their life during what Crawford characterized as a routine traffic stop that took a tragic turn. An official report asserted that Malik had attempted to grab a weapon, compelling Crawford to resort to deadly force in self-defense. The case was concluded following a succinct administrative review, with Crawford being recognized for his acts of heroism. Under fire, what she discovered within those files would leave you astounded. Detective Crawford, Judge Mitchell continued to consult her notes with a practiced precision. "You mentioned that Miss Williams exhibited concerning behavior. Could you elaborate on your observations?" Crawford's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as I held her gaze firmly as I issued lawful orders for the group to disperse. Specifically, she did not promptly lower her gaze or recognize my authority. Her posture remained unchanged, confrontational throughout the encounter. The words struck the courtroom like stones cast into tranquil waters, sending ripples of tension in every direction. The discomfort that permeated the gallery made Angela Williams acutely aware of her daughter's hand tightening in hers as several observers shifted uneasily at the raw truth of Crawford's confession that he had apprehended a child. In a moment of connection, Judge Mitchell paused, placing her pen aside to meet the gaze of Crawford's dark eyes locked onto his pale ones, a steady calmness radiating from her as she faced the detective. Are you affirming under oath that sustaining eye contact amounts to disorderly conduct? Crawford's expression? He felt a slight flush, yet his voice held a steady calm. In my professional experience, extended eye contact may serve as a harbinger of aggressive tendencies. We are conditioned to identify these warning signs before circumstances intensify. In your expert view, what would you suggest? The weight of expectation, probing the nuances of conduct expected from a 15-year-old black girl in the midst of a police encounter. The inquiry settled heavily, inviting reflection. Surgical precision compelling Crawford to either acknowledge unconstitutional policing practices or expose his prejudiced views. Crawford was unaware of the assumptions surrounding how black children ought to conduct themselves in the presence of white authority. On the brink of revealing something far more troubling, Crawford shifted uneasily in the witness chair, perhaps sensing that he found himself venturing into perilous territory, yet he could not help but stand firm in his convictions, much like any other adolescent. Prompt adherence, courteous communication devoid of defiance or attitude issues, Judge Mitchell rendered another. Each question and answer constructed a palpable tension, a sense of inevitability that enveloped everyone in the courtroom. Unable to articulate the reasons, one might ponder the inquiries of a child regarding the interruptions they face, as the answers often reveal themselves to be mere facades. Crawford responded, his irritation becoming evident. A person of respect adheres to instructions. Initially, it inquires through the appropriate avenues. The response unveiled more than Crawford had anticipated, laying bare a perspective in which even the act of legally and constitutionally questioning police authority is viewed as inherently dubious. Judge Mitchell had encountered this philosophy in various forms previously, often articulated by officers who regarded their badges as licenses for unbridled authority instead of emblems of civic duty behind her. With a serene facade, Judge Mitchell's thoughts were in a whirlwind, contemplating the ramifications of Crawford's testimony. She had devoted the last weekend. He delved into not only his arrest records but also the wider statistics from his precinct. The figures depicted a troubling scenario. Black teenagers within Crawford's patrol zone faced arrest rates that were 17 times greater than their white counterparts, even though demographic data reveals no significant disparity in actual crime rates. The revelations contained within those files would leave you astounded. The pivotal moment had arrived 3 days prior, when Detective Lisa Chen from Internal Affairs had discreetly approached Judge Mitchell, voicing concerns regarding Crawford's methods. Chen, a seasoned 20-year veteran, a seasoned member of the force, had embarked on her own inquiry following a series of complaints from the community. Leaders discussed Crawford's aggressive tactics concerning minority youth, as Judge Mitchell Chen had remarked during their proceedings. In a confidential meeting, I have been diligently working to construct a case against Crawford for the past 2 years, yet each time I seem to draw near, obstacles arise. As evidence fades and witnesses hesitate to come forward, a crucial revelation awaits. You must take a look at the manila envelope. Chen had given her photocopied documents that were never meant to leave police custody, Crawford's original. The incident report regarding Malik Thompson's shooting, accompanied by handwritten notes that were excluded from the final version. The official version revealed staggering discrepancies in his initial report. Crawford had penned, the subject seemed to be withdrawing as the engagement commenced, yet the final version declared, subject advanced with determination toward the officer position. The original indicated no weapon initially recovered at the scene. The official report stated, subject's weapon found 15 feet from the body. The indictment of all Crawford's initial notes contained the statement, uncertain about threat level at time of shooting. Judge Mitchell perused the documents, her horror mounting as the realization dawned upon her that she was witnessing the stark evidence of a cover-up that extended well beyond the errors of a single officer. An individual wielding considerable power had aided Crawford in his transformation. A dubious act of gunfire transformed into a valiant display of self-defense. Crawford remained oblivious to the impending turn of events. Detective Crawford, Judge Mitchell declared, her voice sharpening with authority. That caused several individuals in the courtroom to adjust their posture. In your 15 years of law enforcement, how many have juveniles been arrested for behavioral violations? Crawford's eyebrows arched ever so slightly, a hint of surprise flickering across his face, by the shift in direction, yet not overly worried. I don't maintain precise counts, Your Honor. Likely around 60 or 70 cases in total. The years often pass with most matters settling without the need for trial. Children absorb their lessons and steer clear of mischief. Out of those 60 or 70 cases, what percentage would you estimate involved minority juveniles? The question fell into the courtroom with the weight of a stone. Into the still water, Crawford's confident expression wavered, and he surveyed the room, as though seeking an escape route that was merely a figment of imagination. I disregard race, Your Honor. My focus lays solely on behavior, not on demographics. That's commendable, Detective, but surely you can offer a rough estimate, perhaps half or three-quarters of Crawford's hands, which had been resting casually on the armrests of the witness chair, my fists clenched tightly. Surveying a region characterized by a rich tapestry of demographics, the arrests serve as a mirror to the community eye. Judge Mitchell reviewed her notes with careful attention. According to the census data indicates that your patrol area comprises 38% black residents. Would you characterize your juvenile? The arrests mirror the demographic composition. The question's mathematical precision allowed for no evasion. Crawford's complexion had turned ashen, and when he finally spoke, his voice bore a sharpness of desperation that was previously absent. Your Honor, I believe that racial statistics hold no relevance to this case. We are gathered to discuss a particular incident concerning a specific individual who exhibited inappropriate behavior. In that moment, the next words unraveled the truth. Judge Mitchell leaned in, her gaze fixed intently on Crawford. The growing discomfort etched on Detective Crawford's face revealed a troubling pattern of behavior, is undeniably pertinent to credibility. When an officer's arrest record reveals significant racial disparities, it prompts questions about motivation and judgment surfaced as Crawford's composure began to falter, exposing the simmering anger that lay beneath. Hidden beneath his polished exterior, Your Honor, with all due respect, I have dedicated myself to this. For 15 years, I have dedicated myself to the community, putting my life on the line to safeguard its citizens, including those who appear. The phrase citizens who resemble you struck the courtroom with the force of a verbal slap, leaving Judge Mitchell to feel the weight of the collective response. A collective intake of breath from the gallery, the sharp shock of witnessing someone cross a line that should have remained inviolate. Yet, within her, another sensation began to swell. It was not anger, but a chilling presence. The shimmering transparency that emerged when an individual unveiled their essence so wholly that artifice faded away. Impossible, Detective Crawford said, as Judge Mitchell rose slowly from her chair. Your service record is not being questioned. Your methods, your judgment, and your apparent belief that a citizen's race determines the worthiness of constitutional protection is indeed under scrutiny, and rightly so. Crawford stood firm in his position. His height loomed over the judicial bench, creating an atmosphere that felt intentionally intimidating. The contrast was striking. Crawford's imposing 6 feet 2 inches frame-clad in tactical gear stood in stark opposition to Judge Mitchell's slender figure draped in black robes. Yet, all present in the courtroom grasped that genuine authority within these walls derived not from mere physical presence, but from an undeniable moral authority. Crawford remained blissfully unaware of this truth. Your Honor, Crawford began, his voice lowering to a weighty timbre that resonated with the gravity of his impending revelation. An ominous undertone. I understand the true nature of this situation. It revolves around politics, not justice. It concerns shielding offenders rather than safeguarding the innocent. This concerns the transformation of law enforcement into a form of social service. The facade was starting to slip, to fall away, exposing the unvarnished prejudice that had perpetually influenced Crawford's approach to policing. Judge Mitchell remained. She stood with her posture straight and dignified, undeterred by the palpable threat in Detective Crawford's words. This discourse centers on the principle of equal protection under the law, specifically examining the rights of a 15-year-old girl to occupy public spaces. Crawford's face flushed red, unburdened by the weight of being criminalized for the color of her skin. With barely contained fury, he snarled, "You people always twist things." Her voice ascended to a pitch that caused several onlookers to fidget uneasily. You always turn it into a racial issue when it's concerning respect. It revolves around law and order. The expression "you people" determined his destiny, eliminating any chance of retracting his confessions or asserting that his statements had been misinterpreted. Judge Mitchell. She had gathered enough insight to realize that the figure before her embodied all that was flawed within the realm of American law enforcement. The insidious nature of casual racism, the misuse of authority, and the misguided belief that badges confer immunity. From fundamental human decency, she understood that Crawford's revelations were merely the start. Concealed within her desk, the drawer held evidence that would unveil not only his personal transgressions but also the overarching system that had shielded and empowered him during his journey. Ms. Rodriguez, Judge Mitchell remarked, addressing, "Dear Court Administrator, kindly retrieve the evidence folder from my chambers." The file is marked Thompson Investigation. Crawford's complexion drained of color at the utterance of Malik Thompson's name, marking the first instance since his arrival in the courtroom. He appeared truly terrified, realizing that his meticulously concealed secrets were on the verge of being exposed. "Your Honor," Crawford said quickly, his voice adopting a pleading quality that stood in stark contrast to his earlier demeanor. "Arrogance. I am unsure what sort of games you are engaging in with outdated files, but this case pertains to Kesha Williams, not." In the realm of ancient history, Judge Mitchell offered a slight smile, an expression devoid of warmth yet brimming with a sense of satisfaction. "Detective Crawford, nothing regarding Malik Thompson's murder is merely a relic of the past. What I am about to present to this court will demonstrate that Kesha Williams is merely the most recent casualty in a troubling cycle of racial violence that has been shielded by, for far too long, administrative corruption has persisted. What you are about to hear will undoubtedly make an impact." Your blood boil. The courtroom descended into a profound silence, enveloping everyone present. They realized they were on the brink of experiencing something that would alter the course of everything, as Court Administrator Maria Rodriguez stood before them. She emerged from Judge Mitchell's chambers, a thick manila folder in one hand and a laptop computer in the other. Her movements were deliberate and precise. Despite the palpable burden of her load, the folder was adorned with the unmistakable seals of the police department, a testament to the evidence it contained. Tags. Yet Judge Mitchell understood that the most incriminating materials had never been meant for the eyes of the public. "Detective Crawford," Judge Mitchell began, opening the folder with measured precision, I would like to revisit your encounter with 16-year-old Malik Thompson on March 15, 2 years ago. Do you remember that moment, incident?" Crawford's hands trembled, his earlier swagger having completely evaporated. "That case was. Following a comprehensive investigation, I was exonerated of any misconduct and honored with a commendation for my acts of heroism. Under scrutiny, indeed, the official report does portray you as quite the hero," remarked the judge. Mitchell nodded, retrieving a document and raising it for the courtroom's scrutiny. "According to this final incident, Malik Thompson was an armed individual who posed a threat to your life, compelling you to resort to deadly force. Self-defense." Crawford nodded eagerly, perhaps believing he was being offered a lifeline. "That's correct, Your Honor. The subject was extending their hand toward a weapon when I discharged my firearm. It was a classic case of defensive shooting, as Judge Mitchell established in the official ruling." Set the report aside and reached for another document. This one was marked with Crawford's handwriting and bore the original date stamps. That confirmed its genuineness. "That's intriguing, Detective, as your preliminary incident report presents a different tale unfolds. The video they sought to obliterate is on the verge of emerging, Your Honor. I cannot ascertain the nature of the document in your possession, but if it stands in opposition to the official findings, then this is your original." At 11:47 p.m. on March, Detective Crawford submitted the incident report electronically. On the 15th, precisely 4 hours and 23 minutes following the incident involving Malik Thompson, Judge Mitchell's voice resonated with the meticulousness of one who had dedicated countless months to scrutinizing every detail. "Would you like me?" As you presented your initial observations to the court, Crawford's face turned ashen, realized that whatever lay within that document would unravel the meticulously crafted story that had safeguarded. "For 2 years, Your Honor, preliminary reports frequently suffer from inaccuracies due to the tension surrounding critical incidents was palpable as the subject seemed to flee at the onset of engagement, prompting Judge Mitchell to read." Her voice resonated through the stillness of the courtroom, reaching every shadowed corner. "No weapon visible at the moment of the initial shot. The subject collapsed instantly and remained motionless following the impact." The words struck the courtroom with the force of a thunderclap. In the gallery, several observers gasped audibly as they witnessed the physical blows. Contemplated the ramifications of Crawford's own statements. Malik Thompson had not posed a threat to Crawford, rather, he had been in motion. As he fled, Crawford fired at him from behind. Judge Mitchell proceeded to read from Crawford's initial report, stating that the subject was approximately 15 feet away and retreating from the officer's position when the shots rang out. No weapon was recovered at the scene. Initially unclear why the subject was present in the area at the time of contact, Crawford attempted to interject, his voice trembling with urgency. "Those are initial observations made under intense pressure. The official investigation was found to be a cover-up," Judge Mitchell stated softly. Yet her words resonated with undeniable authority, and soon you will uncover the true extent of that cover-up." She motioned toward Maria Rodriguez, who had been arranging the laptop with a deftness born of experience. The courtrooms. A large monitor flickered to life, revealing a media player interface that caused Crawford's remaining color to drain away from his face, completely. "What the court is about to witness," Judge Mitchell announced. The body camera footage capturing Detective Crawford's interaction with Malik Thompson. This is the original unedited footage, deemed inadmissible on account of purported technical difficulties involving Crawford. He sprang to his feet, his professional demeanor utterly fractured. "Your Honor, that footage was sealed by departmental order. If someone has accessed classified evidence, the footage was leaked to me by someone who could no longer bear the weight of silence," Judge Mitchell replied with a calm demeanor. "Someone who realized that concealing a murder renders you an accomplice to it." His response when the video began to play was invaluable. The monitor flickered to life, revealing the timestamp, March 15, 9:23 p.m. The movements were abrupt and disjointed. The screen was dominated by low-resolution body camera footage, punctuated by the sound of Crawford's breathing, and the distant hum of traffic filled the air as the camera jostled with Crawford's movements, revealing fleeting glimpses of a quiet residential street where porch lights cast pools of warm yellow illumination into the surrounding darkness. A figure was observed on foot, weaving between the parked vehicles. Crawford's recorded voice stated, steady and professional, appear to be. A young male, likely between the ages of 16 and 18, was caught on camera. A slight figure cloaked in darkness maneuvered cautiously between the cars, clearly intent on evading notice. There was something unsettling about Malik Thompson's movements. He appeared more like a frightened child, desperately trying to find his way home without a clear path ahead. Captivating the audience, Crawford's voice trembled as he viewed his own footage. "Your Honor, please, this is taken." In a moment that felt entirely detached from the surrounding events, Judge Mitchell raised her hand, signaling for silence as Malik Thompson's face came into view. A young figure stands before the screen, fear evident in their eyes, clearly unarmed. Hands raised, they offer a gesture of surrender. Crawford had left out of every official report. The most exciting part is just around the corner. The body camera footage pressed on, with piercing clarity depicting Malik Thompson pressed against a chain-link fence, his hands lifted high above. His head bowed, his voice emerged from the courtroom speakers, young and trembling with fear. "Officer, please, I beg you not to shoot. I haven't done anything wrong. I was merely walking home from my shift at the grocery store." Crawford's recorded voice replied with an icy professionalism, the subject displaying anomalous actions and possible warning signs, ready to evaluate the degree of adherence. However, the footage revealed something entirely different. Malik wasn't exhibiting any threatening behavior. Instead, he was cowering against the fence, tears streaming down his face. Tears streamed down his face as he desperately tried to present himself as non-threatening. His grocery, the store uniform was prominently displayed, accompanied by the name tag that marked him as an employee. "I don't have any weapons," Malik's voice echoed through the speakers, a note of desperation lacing his words. "You can search me, please, I long to return home to my little sister." While Crawford's present demeanor in the courtroom serves as a fascinating exploration of the mind, his face shifted from a pallid hue to a ghastly gray, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Despite the courtroom's cool temperature, Your Honor, that video fails to capture the complete context. There were intelligence reports have emerged concerning armed suspects in the vicinity, as noted by Detective Crawford and Judge Mitchell, interrupted while consulting another document from her folder. There were no intelligence reports regarding armed suspects lingered in the shadows, yet the air remained still, devoid of any radio calls alerting to suspicious activity. No reports of crimes echoed through the streets of that area, leaving an unsettling silence in their wake. On March 15, the evidence continued to accumulate against Crawford's constructed narrative, as Judge Mitchell revealed a time-stamped radio log reveals that Crawford neither called for backup nor reported any suspicious activity. He never suggested that he was in pursuit of an armed suspect. His subsequent words unveiled everything on the monitor unfolded with haunting clarity as Malik Thompson's final moments were displayed. The boy remained pressed against the fence, hands visible, making no threatening movements. When Crawford's voice abruptly shifted in tone, the subject's hand moved toward the waistband area, prompting a threat assessment that indicated an immediate danger to officer safety. However, the camera captured the unfolding situation. Malik's hands remained steadfastly elevated, a testament to his resolve. His last words resonated in the stillness, lingering in the air. In the courtroom, a plea echoed, "Please don't hurt me. Tell my mama I love her." Then, the sharp crack of gunshots pierced the air. Without warning, 3 rapid shots rang out, causing Malik to crumple to the ground. The body camera recorded Crawford's actions. As he approached the still figure, his hushed words were captured by the sensitive microphone. "Stupid kid I should have known better than to run in this neighborhood." The courtroom erupted in shocked gasps and angry murmurs. In the gallery, a number of individuals were openly weeping, while others remained seated in a state of stunned silence, grappling with the chilling reality of what they had just witnessed. The execution of a terrified child left Crawford's face utterly pale. His hands trembled as he clutched the witness chair. "Your Honor," Crawford implored, a note of desperation in his voice. "You have to understand. The pressures faced by officers in the field demand split-second decisions that can mean the difference between life and death." In that moment, Detective Crawford found himself at the mercy of Judge Mitchell's commanding voice, slicing through his attempts at justification. What we just witnessed was not a split-second decision. That was the intentional killing of an unarmed child who pleaded for his life. His composure finally shattered completely. Standing at the witness stand, he began, crying out with the frantic fury of a trapped beast. "You believe you grasp the essence of police work. You believe that merely sitting in your lavish robe grants one the audacity to critique those officers who bravely face peril daily, while contemplating the heinous act of taking innocent lives and the subsequent concealment of such atrocities. False reports do not elevate you to the status of a hero, they mark you as a criminal." Judge Mitchell responded with a chilling composure, addressing Crawford. He advanced toward the bench, his movement charged with an intensity that set the court security on high alert. "You people." Everything seemed to twist around him. "That kid was trouble, I could sense it the moment our eyes met. He was destined for a grim fate, either dead or in some dire situation. In prison, yet I have spared society the burden." What he uttered next will leave you astounded. The words lingered in the atmosphere, akin to noxious fumes, exposing Crawford's racist perspective with sharp precision. He had just admitted to taking the life of a child, driven solely by racial bias and the unfounded belief that black. Judge Mitchell experienced a chilling sense of satisfaction as he contemplated the notion that teenagers were inherently criminal. Within her chest as she came to the stark realization that Crawford had just delivered the confession that would shatter his career and imprison his freedom. Forever the courtroom descended into a silence so deep that the only sound was the weighty rhythm of Crawford's breathing. The distant hum of the air conditioning system filled the room as Judge Mitchell observed a police officer confessing to racially driven to kill in the glaring light of the courtroom, his statements captured by an array of devices and observed by a multitude of witnesses. Yet she wasn't finished with him yet. "Detective Crawford," Judge Mitchell said, her voice imbued with the quiet authority of someone who held all the cards. "Since you appear so eager to express your views on policing black youth, perhaps you would. I would like to present this audio recording to the court." She gestured towards Maria Rodriguez, who proceeded to click on another file. The laptop hummed softly as the courtroom speakers crackled to life, revealing voices that were instantly recognizable as Crawford and another man captured in what appeared to be a bar or restaurant ambience, accompanied by the distant sounds of clinking glasses and Crawford's face shifted through a spectrum of expressions, each one revealing a layer of surprise. Anxiety gave way to a chilling clarity as he understood the implications of his private conversations has been safeguarded for future generations. What you are about to listen to will ignite a fire within you. The issue at hand with law enforcement. Today, Crawford's recorded voice came through, slightly slurred yet unmistakably his. "It seems we are no longer permitted to execute our duties effectively. Each time we apprehend one of these troublemakers, a sympathetic soul steps in." The judge begins to weep over the issue of excessive force. The second voice recognized by Judge Mitchell belongs to Lieutenant Marcus Hayes. Crawford's immediate supervisor let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "Tell me," he said, "reflect on it. That Thompson kid, a little troublemaker, received precisely what was coming to him. Yet, we found ourselves tiptoeing around the family's emotions for months." As Crawford's recorded voice droned on with an unsettling nonchalance, the boy strolled through the neighborhood with an air of ownership, likely involved in something illicit or scheming his next move. Gang initiation. These young individuals must understand that their actions carry consequences. It's unfortunate there aren't more officers willing to impart that lesson, Hayes replied. Perhaps we'd encounter fewer issues in these communities. if more of them grasped the consequences of disregarding authority. Crawford chuckled, the sound reverberating through the courtroom with a chilling sense of cruelty. Don't worry about that, Marcus. I ensure that every child in my patrol area is aware of the situation. Many of them grasp the reality swiftly once they learn about what transpired with their friend Malik. The moment he heard his own voice, his reaction was nothing short of priceless. Crawford's face had turned ashen. As he absorbed his own words, which extolled the murder of a 16-year-old boy, the atmosphere in the courtroom thickened, with people seated around him, each lost in their own thoughts. An astonished hush enveloped the room as they absorbed the nonchalant demeanor of Crawford and his supervisor. The conversation turned to the use of murder as a means of instilling fear in black youth. The recording persisted for several additional moments. Heart-wrenching moments chronicling the dialogues between two officers who witnessed the execution of children deemed acceptable in policy, provided the victims were black. Crawford could be was recounted, detailing additional incidents in which he had employed undue force while Hayes offered administrative support. And where did you come across that recording? Crawford murmured, his voice barely audible. Faintly discernible over the hum of the courtroom's ventilation system, a voice emerged from someone unable to endure the weight of the unspoken conspiracy. Not anymore, Judge Mitchell replied. Someone who grasped the complexities of safeguarding those who commit murder renders you complicit in their misdeeds. Crawford came to the unsettling realization that his innermost musings had been recorded and maintained that his offhand admissions of racial animosity and aggression had now become part of the official documentation. His previous bravado and aggression had evaporated, replaced by the hollow gaze of a man witnessing the disintegration of his entire world. Your Honor, Crawford said desperately, those conversations were taken out of context. Officers sometimes use dark humor to manage the pressures of perilous employment. Detective Crawford, Judge Mitchell interjected, we have just listened to you and you're a supervisor reveling in the tragic death of a child, contemplating how to exploit the tragedy to instill fear in other black youth. The patrol area loomed large, shrouded in an unsettling silence. There is no context that makes that acceptable. The gravity of Crawford's unmasked transgressions loomed heavily in the air. The courtroom hung heavy like a toxic cloud, as Judge Mitchell observed the faces in the gallery, each one mirroring shock and horror. An understanding that transcended the surface, acknowledging the moment they observed the facade of institutional racism being dismantled, to unveil the harsh truth lurking beneath. Yet, the judge had more to say to him. Crawford was on the brink of uncovering the truth. Judge Mitchell had been meticulously constructing this case for months, and the evidence he possessed was formidable. He had just heard that it was only the beginning of his nightmare. Crawford slumped in the witness chair, as if the weight of the unveiled transgressions had turned into a torment too great to endure. The assured gait he had shown while stepping into the courtroom was supplanted by the anguished stance of a man witnessing the disintegration of 15 years' worth of meticulously crafted deceptions. In that moment, Your Honor, Crawford spoke, his voice trembling with barely contained emotion. In a state of panic, I must urgently communicate with my attorney. This entire process has devolved into a witch hunt, aimed at dismantling my very existence. Judge Mitchell regarded him with the serene poise of an individual who had devoted months to meticulous preparation. At this juncture, Detective Crawford, you find yourself providing testimony as a witness in the case concerning Miss Williams. Should you choose to invoke your Fifth Amendment rights, you may certainly do so. However, it is important to recognize that your testimony thus far has been given under oath and is part of the official record. Crawford's hands trembled, his face shifting through a spectrum of emotions, pale white and flushed red as he grappled with the enormity of his predicament. Every word he had uttered, every confession he had made was meticulously documented by court reporters and captured by various devices. There was no way to take back what he had disclosed regarding his calculated targeting of black youth. This is all a setup, Crawford asserted. He exclaimed, his voice escalating to a pitch that caused several individuals in the courtroom to squirm in their seats. You orchestrated this entire scheme to ensnare me. Your motives are not rooted in justice, rather, you seek to dismantle the reputation of a dedicated officer who has been striving to restore order to these streets. Yet, the judge had more in store for him. Judge Mitchell proceeded to unveil another chapter. She sifted through her evidence folder, extracting documents adorned with the official FBI letterhead and marked with classification stamps. Crawford's eyes widened in realization as he recognized the insignia of federal law enforcement, grasping for the first time that his offenses had garnered interest that extended well beyond the confines of the local courthouse. Detective Crawford, Judge Mitchell remarked, "What you fail to grasp is that this case has transcended its focus on Kesha Williams. The instant you admitted to the murder of Malik Thompson, federal authorities have been closely observing these proceedings based on evidence that had been presented to them months prior." As if conjured by her utterance, the rear doors of the courtroom opened to admit three individuals clad in dark suits, their movements precise and purposeful. The lead figure, a stern-faced, a woman with graying hair, approached the bench, credentials in hand, ready to present her case. "Your Honor, I am Special Agent Sarah Chen, representing the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Warrants have been issued for the arrest of Detective Crawford on federal charges related to the deprivation of rights under the color of law conspiracy." In a moment charged with tension, Crawford surveyed the courtroom, his eyes wide and frantic, as if searching for an escape from the weight of his actions, murder and obstruction of justice hanging heavily in the air. Now realizing that his attack on judicial authority had been observed not only by local court personnel but by federal law enforcement officials who had meticulously constructed a case against him over the course of several months. "This is impossible," Crawford said, his voice barely above a whisper, internal turmoil evident in his expression. "The affairs were resolved in my favor. The district attorney's office conducted a thorough review of the case, adhering to departmental protocol." Agent Chen made contact with Crawford. With handcuffs in place, her expression remained professionally neutral, yet her intent was unmistakable. "Detective Ryan Crawford, you are hereby placed under arrest for violations of federal civil rights law. You are entitled to remain silent." In hushed tones, "Remember this, anything you utter may be wielded against you in a court of law." Crawford's legs appeared to falter as the weight of his circumstances pressed down upon him. The career he had painstakingly constructed on deceit and brutality culminated in federal restraints, his transgressions laid bare before the world, the very community he had terrorized for years. "You people set me up," Crawford declared, snarled, his voice brimming with the same racial animosity that had fueled his policing career. This entire situation was in a calculated scheme to undermine a principled officer, one who possessed the courage to act decisively. Judge Mitchell rose with deliberation, a movement that demanded the immediate attention of all present in the courtroom, with Detective Crawford standing as the sole figure who had shattered the silence. "Your career defined you. Each confession spilled from your lips. Every transgression was yours alone. Your decision has led you here, and now you must confront the repercussions you believed would remain at bay." What he uttered next shattered the silence. Every conceivable line unfolded as Agent Chen commenced reading Crawford his Miranda rights. Judge Mitchell recognized that there was an additional piece of evidence that must be disclosed prior to the federal proceedings. Authorities apprehended Crawford. The audio recording they had just listened to was incriminating. Yet, there was more to the story. A dialogue that would unveil the intricate web of deceit shielding Crawford's transgressions for years. Agent Chen, Judge Mitchell stated, "Before you proceed with Detective Crawford's arrest, there is further evidence that the investigation team must uncover evidence that unveils the conspiracy's reach, stretching well beyond the actions of a single officer. Individual crimes." Crawford's face shifted from pale to a deep gray as Judge Mitchell motioned for Maria Rodriguez to upload another audio file. His urgent efforts to uphold his innocence lay in ruins, dismantled by the weight of his own recorded confessions, yet what was on the verge of unfolding was played would obliterate any possibility of asserting that his actions were deviations rather than standard procedure. "What the court is about to hear," Judge Mitchell announced, as a recording of Detective Crawford unfolded, revealing his methods in detail. Captain Robert Morrison, the commanding officer of the East Side Precinct, engaged in this conversation 6 months ago at the annual gathering of the Police Benevolent Association, unfolded with a moment that was nothing short of priceless as the video began to play, capturing his reaction perfectly. The speakers came alive, filling the air with the vibrant sounds of a bustling restaurant, glasses clinking and a symphony of conversations weaving together. Amidst the backdrop of ambient noise, Crawford's voice cut through distinctly, slightly intoxicated yet unmistakably engaged in discussion. Captain Morrison Crawford's recorded voice expressed gratitude, stating, "I want to thank you for supporting me regarding the Thompson shooting. A few of the younger officers have been inquiring about my techniques and it's reassuring to hear that command has my back," Morrison's gravelly voice replied with a casual authority. "Ryan, you do what needs to be done. Actions must be taken to ensure the safety of these streets. The public often lacks insight into the complexities of policing within urban communities. At times, one must deliver a message that resonates. Crawford's laughter echoed, a chilling sound laced with casual cruelty. That was the essence of it. Precisely what I conveyed to Hayes. The Thompson kid was ideal for that. Young and brimming with confidence, believed he could roam my territory without paying the necessary homage. His demise served as a lesson to every other miscreant in the neighborhood. The consequences of failing to comply without delay became evident. Morrison's response unveiled the underlying institutional support that Crawford's crimes were facilitated by a crucial element. The paperwork must narrate the correct tale. As long as the reports convey the intended message, genuine signs of danger, internal affairs will consistently support us. The courtroom fell into a chilling silence, absorbing the gravity of the moment. While two police officials engaged in a conversation about the art of fabricating evidence and the casualness of covering up murders, treating it as if it were merely part of their everyday administrative duties, Crawford's face drained of color as he listened to his own voice recounting the tale of Malik Thompson. Execution as a calculated act of terror directed at the black community. However, there is additional evidence that remains unseen. The recording went on, with Morrison detailing specific information. Guidelines on how to alter incident reports to rationalize the use of excessive force always highlight aggressive posturing and failure to comply, Morrison's voice articulated. Such phrases provide review boards with the necessary language. They must determine whether shootings are justified, even when the circumstances raise doubts. Crawford's recorded voice expressed gratitude for the guidance. That's brilliant, Captain. I've been using variations of those exact phrases. In every report, the allure lies in the ability to apply these insights to nearly any behavior, eye contact, body language, and tone of voice. Proving the true meaning behind someone's posture is an elusive endeavor. The dialogue unveiled a methodical approach to making illegal what is simply a part of human nature, especially when that nature is expressed by black teenagers who chose not to present the prompt submission that Crawford insisted Judge Mitchell observe the expressions in the gallery processing the moment of understanding that they had just listened to police officials outline the intentional creation of evidence as commonplace. Agent Chen had ceased reading Crawford his rights, recognizing that the evidence at hand was uncovered would profoundly alter the trajectory of her inquiry. This was not merely a matter of a single corrupt officer, it was concerning a complete command structure that had entrenched racial violence and concealment. Crawford endeavored to. He interrupted the playback, his voice cracking with desperation. Your Honor, these conversations are being taken. Officers engage in discussions about hypothetical scenarios, completely detached from the context. Time, Detective Crawford, Judge Mitchell said with a devastating calm. There is no room for speculation regarding Malik Thompson's death. The reality is stark, as it reflects the tragic fate of 16 other black individuals. Young individuals you've detained on false accusations, and the conspiracy we've just discussed is anything but theoretical. Between you and your commanding officers, the weight of institutional corruption loomed over the courtroom, a toxic presence. The cloud envelopes, each breath a struggle, a perilous endeavor. In just 5 minutes, prepare for a revelation that will astonish you. The institutional conspiracy had eradicated Crawford's final chance of asserting that his offenses were mere individual anomalies. Confronted with audio evidence of pervasive concealment linked to his direct superiors, Crawford's mental state, the defenses finally crumbled entirely. What surfaced was the unrefined, unvarnished, the animosity that had perpetually fueled his career in law enforcement. He asked, "Do you seek the truth?" Crawford's voice erupted, reverberating against the marble walls of the courtroom with a desperate fury. Fine, I'll give you the harsh reality of policing these neighborhoods is undeniable. Agent Chen stepped closer to Crawford, realizing that a total psychological collapse was on the horizon and readying to step in should he start to unravel. The physically dangerous atmosphere. Judge Mitchell remained behind the bench, her composed demeanor providing a stark contrast to Crawford's sanity began to unravel, his voice cracking as the years weighed heavily upon him. A torrent of suppressed rage surged forth. They lack an understanding of respect. They simply do not comprehend. They believe they can strut about, exuding an air of defiance and casting challenging glances, as if we are meant to accept it. Simply accept it. The expression these people had transformed into Crawford's verbal hallmark, exposing his perspective with clarity. Judge Mitchell regarded his meltdown with the cool detachment of a seasoned observer, one who had dedicated years to the study of human behavior. The exploration of institutional racism takes a turn that may leave you astounded. Crawford's hands trembled uncontrollably, his face suffused with a deep crimson, the kind of fury that heralded either total destruction, collapse, or explosive violence. You perch in your opulent robe, feigning to be concerned with justice, yet you have no idea what it's like to confront gangbangers, drug dealers, and aspiring thugs on a daily basis. On that singular day, Detective Crawford addressed Judge Mitchell, her voice steady and composed. Despite the evident menace in his demeanor, Malik Thompson found employment at a grocery store. Kesha Williams is an honor roll student. Neither of them belonged to gangs or dealt drugs. Crawford's. The response unveiled the profound nature of his delusions. Every delusion has its origin. That Thompson kid was already exhibiting early signs. The manner in which he walked, the way his gaze met mine, the inflection in his voice when I dared to question him. I'd been reflecting on it all. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, the air thick with anticipation as Crawford laid bare his confession, profiling and targeting children solely based on his prejudiced views of typical adolescence. His psychological collapse served as a profound illustration of how institutional prejudice rationalized its existence. Amidst the shadows of dehumanization and the allure of fantasy, Crawford abruptly directed his gaze with piercing intensity. At Judge Mitchell, his finger trembled with rage. "You're the worst kind, pretending to be some sort of moral authority, power while shielding offenders and gang affiliates. Do you believe your legal education elevates you above the officers who brave danger daily?" Judge Mitchell sensed the shared gasp of realization from the gallery as Crawford's verbal assault grew more personal and menacing. Yet, she also felt, there is a profound satisfaction in witnessing the true nature of a system unfold so entirely that denial fades away. Unbelievable. This is where it truly takes a turn for the extraordinary. Crawford's tirade persisted with escalating intensity. "I safeguarded this community from individuals such as that Thompson kid for 15 years, thwarting crimes at every turn. Before they occurred, I intervened to save lives, halting these troublemakers before they could inflict harm on the innocent." The delusion was, Crawford genuinely believed that the act of murdering unarmed children was a form of heroic police work. His psychological framework had distorted reality so completely that he perceived himself as a guardian rather than a detective. "Crawford," Judge Mitchell said, her voice slicing through his tirade with the precision of a surgical blade. "You took the life of a 16-year-old boy as he made his way home from work. You instilled fear in countless children whose only wrongdoing was existing while black. You are not a protector. You embody the very essence of the criminal that good police officers stand against." Meant to halt, Crawford's face underwent a tumultuous array of expressions: rage, desperation mingled with the cold calculation of a cornered creature poised to strike. His next words would, Crawford snarled, crossing every line of courtroom decorum and personal dignity. "You know what your problem is?" Approached the bench with palpable intimidation. "Do you truly believe you stand on equal ground with us now? Do you think donning a judge's robe or a fancy suit alters your true essence? Yet I see what lies beneath all that facade." The silence that. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, as every soul in the courtroom sensed that Crawford was on the brink of an irrevocable decision that would obliterate him entirely and without hope of return. The strike that would conclude it all was on the verge of occurring. The tension in courtroom 7A had escalated to a breaking point, the very air vibrating with the energy of what was to come. Crawford loomed less than 6 feet from Judge Mitchell's bench, his expression twisted with a rage that teetered on the brink of total breakdown or explosive action. Every person in the room was thick with an unsettling tension, as if the air itself sensed the impending doom. "You believe you're invulnerable up there," Crawford remarked. Continued, his voice descending into a perilous whisper that seemed to echo throughout every corner of the courtroom. You believe that robe shields you from the harsh realities of life, yet I see through the facade. You're merely another pretentious detective." Crawford. Judge Mitchell interjected, her voice resonating with the weight of judicial authority. "You will address this, show the court the respect it deserves, or face the consequences of contempt. Your career hangs in the balance, crimes are laid bare, and your liberty teeters on the brink of conclusion. Do not exacerbate this situation for yourself." Crawford's response was a laugh, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the air, was devoid of any humor, yet overflowing with animosity. "You've only made it worse, madam. You've just shattered my whole existence has been shaped by a series of manipulated recordings and wild conspiracy theories. Do you really believe I have anything more to lose, Agent? Chen edged nearer to Crawford's position, her hand instinctively reaching for her service weapon as she perceived the indicators of an individual gearing up for aggression. The court security officers were bracing themselves for action. Reveals that Crawford's military training, combined with his desperate mindset, rendered him exceptionally perilous at that moment. That moment, which would change everything, was on the brink of unfolding. Crawford advanced another step toward the bench, his movement charged with aggression, to elicit prompt reactions from the security team. However, Judge Mitchell raised her hand, halting the officers. Before they could intervene, she had dedicated her entire career to standing firm against men who thought their anger bestowed upon them unique privileges. Detective Crawford, she remarked, rising to her full height, loomed behind the bench. You have confessed to murder, admitted to systematic racism, and revealed a conspiracy that extends to the upper echelons of your department. The only course of action left is to embrace accountability for your transgressions and wish that federal prosecutors extend to you a greater compassion than you afforded to Malik Thompson. Crawford's visage underwent a final metamorphosis from fury to strategy to a chilling intent to kill. His voice, when he spoke, resonated with a flat authority, the kind that belonged to someone who had made an irrevocable decision. Your Honor, it seems the moment has come for a lesson in true authority. Crawford's leg swung in a brutal arc, his tactical boot striking Judge Mitchell's midsection with such force that it propelled her upward, off her feet. The impact hurled her backward into her chair, the sound of the blow reverberating through in the marble courtroom. A thunderous crack echoed as the kick landed with devastating force, commanding the attention of the judge. Mitchell's slender form withstood an onslaught that could have gravely harmed or even taken the life of someone of her stature. Yet, even as she doubled over in pain, her eyes remained wide open. Her dignity stood unwavering. She absorbed Crawford's violence with a fierce resilience. Maintaining the same poise she had exhibited during the entire hearing, she denied him the pleasure of witnessing her. The courtroom descended into turmoil as Agent Chen unsheathed her weapon amidst the chaos. Security officers surged towards Crawford from various directions, while spectators erupted in screams. Took refuge as court personnel initiated emergency protocols crafted specifically for such a disastrous scenario. Breakdown of order. Crawford loomed over Judge Mitchell's fallen figure, embodying the essence of a conqueror. His expression contorted with the raw delight of an individual who has at last unveiled his authentic self, unbound and unfiltered. Such is the consequence. When you forget your place, he snarled, his voice cutting through the chaos of the courtroom like a knife. Yet, his moment of triumph was fleeting. Agent Chen's voice sliced through the clamor with a commanding sharpness. Ryan Crawford, you are facing federal charges for assaulting a federal judicial officer, a crime that carries a potential sentence of up to 20 years in federal prison. Security officers descended upon Crawford, expertly subduing him to the ground with a precision that spoke of their training. Despite the efforts to oppose the man who had strode into the courtroom with an air of arrogance and unassailable self-assurance were now rendered futile, leaving him face down upon the marble floor, federal handcuffs biting into his wrists as a dozen witnesses recorded his total psychological and professional downfall. But hold on, there's additional evidence. Judge Mitchell gradually straightened herself, her complexion wan and drawn, yet her expression remained unchanged. The red mark where Crawford's boot had connected was already beginning to show, but her voice remained steady as she spoke. Let the record reflect that Detective Ryan Crawford has physically assaulted a federal judge presided in open court, with multiple federal witnesses present, as Crawford lay restrained on the courtroom floor. Agent Chen communicated with her backup team using discreet hand signals, suggesting that a significantly larger operation was already in motion. The assault on Judge Mitchell had been observed by federal agents. However, Crawford's arrest was merely the inception of what would evolve into the most thorough civil rights inquiry in the annals of the region. Your Honor, Agent Chen stated, stepping closer to the bench, her weapon still aimed at Crawford's motionless figure. For the past 8 months, we have been undertaking a parallel investigation into the activities of Detective Crawford. The events that unfolded here today have furnished us with the conclusive evidence required to take action against his entire network. Judge Mitchell has granted acceptance of this crucial information. A glass of water from Maria Rodriguez, taking a moment to gather her thoughts as she navigated the weight of the implications of Agent Chen's words echoed with the weight of truth. The federal investigation had been unfolding alongside her own gathering of evidence. The assembly implied a degree of organization that Crawford had not foreseen. To what extent is your investigation, Agent Chun? Judge Mitchell inquired, her voice unwavering despite the agony from Crawford's assault. Chen motioned toward the courtroom doors as more federal agents filed in, their briefcases and electronic devices in tow. We possess warrants for 12 officers within Crawford's precinct, including Captain Morrison. Lieutenant Hayes, we are conducting coordinated raids on 4 police stations, confiscating computers and files. As surveillance equipment whirred in the background, Crawford raised his head from the floor, his expression a tumultuous blend of fury and incredulity. This situation seems insurmountable. Internal Affairs have resolved every case, and the DA's office. He meticulously reviewed everything, and the moment he grasped the full scope of the situation was truly priceless. Chen gazed down at Crawford, maintaining a veneer of professional detachment. Detective Crawford, the federal investigation had commenced. When Mrs. Eleanor Thompson Malik's mother reached out to our Civil Rights Division with proof that local authorities had overlooked for 2 years, she maintained copies of all documents, including the original incident reports that inexplicably vanished from police records. The disclosure regarding Malik Thompson's mother, the involvement of federal investigators deepened Crawford's nightmare. The carefully crafted facade had been coming apart for months, all while he stayed unaware of the mounting opposition gathering in the shadows. Additionally, cooperation was received from Detective Lisa Chen in Internal Affairs. Agent Chen continued, presenting documentation that revealed a deliberate campaign of evidence destruction and witness intimidation. Captain Morrison, your own supervisor, is presently under arrest at his residence due to the conspiracy charges that have come to light. In today's recordings, Crawford's psychological unraveling intensified as he came to grasp the complete extent of the federal. This operation, orchestrated by you all, was meticulously planned. This entire hearing was nothing more than a setup. Judge Mitchell rose slowly, her dignity unwavering in the face of Crawford's assault. Detective Crawford, this hearing centered on Kesha Williams' fundamental right to exist without the shadow of criminalization cast upon her due to her race. Your own confessions, which unveiled a murder conspiracy, were a decision you made, not part of our scheme. Agent Chen's radio buzzed with notifications from various teams. Command reported, we have Morrison in custody. Hayes is resisting arrest yet remains contained. We have seized around 400 cases, files and 17 computer hard drives from the East Side precinct. The scope was staggering. This wasn't merely a matter of Crawford's individual crimes, it was about dismantling an entire network of officers who had been systematically misusing their power, all the while benefiting from administrative safeguards. Crawford was abruptly lifted to his feet by security officers, his expression a whirlwind of emotions, caught in a tumultuous storm of fury and fear as the truth of his predicament crystallized before him. It all unraveled because of that one rebellious youth. Everything was perfectly fine until you all began to incite chaos, Your Honor. Mitchell experienced a chilling sense of satisfaction as she observed Crawford's worldview disintegrate. For 15 years, he had instilled fear in black youth, wielding his power with unsettling confidence. The system that once shielded him was now betraying him with the unwavering might of federal law enforcement echoed as Detective Crawford addressed the assembly, her voice resonating through every corner of the room. In the courtroom, Malik Thompson was far from just a punk kid. He was a 16-year-old boy with a family that cherished him, a job that filled him with pride, and a future that was taken from him. And now you shall confront the consequences of that theft. As Crawford was escorted away in federal custody, his footsteps resonated in the silence. Through the marble halls where he had once strutted with unquestioned authority, Judge Mitchell understood that they had observed an event that transcended the failure of an individual. They had witnessed a system at last embracing its responsibility. The most exciting moment is approaching. Just hours after Crawford's arrest, the FBI's synchronized efforts began to unfold. The operation resulted in the apprehension of 17 officers from 3 distinct precincts, each confronting federal charges that span a range of civil offenses, rights violations to conspiracy to commit murder. The extent of the corruption reached far beyond what even Judge Mitchell had envisioned throughout her extensive investigation. That Captain Robert Morrison was apprehended at his suburban residence home, sharing a meal with his family. The sight of him being taken away in handcuffs emerging as the headline news. Every local news channel reported that Lieutenant Marcus Hayes tried to secure himself within his office at headquarters. He was in the midst of destroying documents when federal agents burst through the door, discovering him feeding papers into a paper shredder. But the most devastating blow to the conspiracy emerged from an unforeseen source. Detective Lisa Chen, who had been, for more than a year, she had been discreetly capturing conversations with her colleagues, meticulously constructing her own case against the corruption lurks within her department. You won't believe what she managed to capture on tape. Agent Sarah Chin, not related to the detective, has uncovered something shocking. Had set up a command center in the courthouse's conference room, orchestrating arrests while examining the evidence that had been gathering for months. Judge Mitchell entered the briefing, still marked by the visible signs of Crawford's assault, yet resolute in pursuing the investigation to its end. Your Honor, Agent Chen stated. Scattering photographs and documents across the conference table, Detective Lisa Chen's recordings unveil that Crawford's methods were not merely recognized by his supervisors, they were actively promoted as a benchmark for other officers to emulate. The photographs captured training sessions in which Crawford was showcased as a prime example of proactive policing. Involves instructing younger officers on recognizing pre-criminal behavior among minority youth. Veiled language could not obscure the truth that Crawford had been shaping an entire generation of officers to perceive black adolescents are fundamentally wary and warrant forceful action. 1. The recording features Morrison speaking to a gathering of new recruits, while Detective Crawford has demonstrated remarkable proficiency in stopping crimes before they happen. His skill in recognizing troublemakers and tackling issues at the outset has established the patrol area stands as one of the safest in the county. The troublemakers Morrison alluded to were children such as Malik Thompson and Kesha Williams, teenagers whose only transgression was the mere act of existing while black in Crawford's domain. Issues that were tackled at the outset revolved around essential constitutional rights that Crawford had been methodically, with departmental approval, violations were uncovered. What they discovered in the files will astonish you. The evidence confiscated from the police is startling. The computers unveiled the full extent of the conspiracy, as internal emails disclosed the collaboration between Morrison and Hayes in crafting their narratives for challenging incidents with detailed guidance on how to adjust reports to achieve positive results. From the review boards, one email from Hayes to Morrison stated, Crawford's latest. The incident requires a reworking of its narrative. The original report states that the subject was retreating. A revision is advised to reflect this accurately, highlight the significance of threat indicators and the paramount importance of officer safety concerns. Morrison's response was equally damning. An internal affairs review was already in progress, scheduled for in the coming month. There appears to be little media interest, and it seems the family is unlikely to pursue civil action due to various factors. The nonchalant manner in which these officials spoke about altering evidence and concealing possible truths regarding the subject's juvenile record is striking. The murders exposed an entrenched institutional culture in which safeguarding the actions of killer cops was the norm, as noted by the judge. Mitchell experienced a wave of nausea as he absorbed the clinical terminology that laid bare the devastation of families and the pervasive denial of justice. Yet, the investigation unveiled its most startling revelation through financial insights. Documents revealing that Crawford and his accomplices had been awarded bonuses for upholding low crime statistics in the department had been effectively compensating officers to lower reported crime, establishing incentives for either concealing genuine offenses or thwarting them via intimidation and brutality. Just wait until you witness what unfolds. By evening, 3 additional officers had reached plea agreements in exchange. In a twist of fate, Detective Marcus Williams, sharing a surname with the pop sensation Kesha, offered testimony against his superiors. Thorough narratives of Morrison's teaching sessions on the art of evidence manipulation and the tactics of witness intimidation. Officer Jennifer Torres disclosed that Crawford had proudly proclaimed his efforts to instill respect in ungrateful teenagers during the department's social events, detailing his encounter with Malik Thompson as essential. The fabric of corruption wove its way through the community, reaching beyond individual officers to ensnare prosecutors who had consistently embraced Crawford's concocted reports without scrutiny, while internal affairs investigators who had suppressed grievances against him in return for advancements and advantageous placements during Crawford's reign of terror, was facilitated by a comprehensive network of institutional complicity in which the justice system had placed a higher value on safeguarding the police than on ensuring the protection of citizens. At long last, justice was served. The federal investigation has broadened its scope, reaching beyond Riverside County, as it uncovers similar patterns of abuse affecting all parties involved. In adjacent territories, Agent Chen's team uncovered that Crawford's techniques had been disseminated via casual connections among police trainers and consultants, disseminating his harmful methodology to law enforcement throughout. 3 weeks following Crawford's arrest, multiple states found themselves under the scrutiny of the Department of Justice, declared the most extensive civil rights inquiry in years, covering 14 police departments and engaging more than 200 officers who had either taken part in or facilitated systematic abuse of. The extent of this corruption involving minority youth is truly astonishing. Attorney General Patricia Williams convened a press conference to unveil the establishment of a federal task force endowed with unlimited resources and subpoena power reveal a profound betrayal of the very principles that underpin law in Riverside County. Enforcement is meant to uphold the truth. She proclaimed, "This investigation will pursue the evidence wherever it may lead, irrespective of status or political ties." The task force's initial significant advancement emerged from an unforeseen origin: police body camera footage that had been automatically transferred to cloud servers yet remained untouched. Supervisors have reviewed months of accumulated video, uncovering hundreds of encounters in which officers employed Crawford's techniques to instill fear in minority youth, frequently while conversing about their methods that unmistakably revealed their racial intentions. A particularly incriminating video displayed Officer Derek Martinez, a protege of Crawford, intervened with a 14-year-old black youth. A girl exhibited suspicious walking patterns. When she inquired about the reason for her detention, Martinez replied, "Crawford, it has become evident that you tend to seek legal counsel the moment you're confronted. This behavior reveals an underlying guilt, doesn't it?" The phrase "you people" had evolved into a hallmark of Crawford's followers, exposing the depths of his racist worldview, contaminated a whole generation of officers. Federal investigators commenced employing that particular terminology as a means of inquiry. An investigation in police communications revealed a web of corruption that extended across various agencies. What they uncovered, the clandestine exchanges, will astound you. The inquiry uncovered that Crawford had been functioning as a component of a casual camaraderie among officers who exchanged insights regarding challenging families and orchestrated their responses to concerns from the community. Surfaced as text message exchanges revealed officers alerting one another about activist parents who could potentially record their children's interactions with law enforcement. One message thread featured Crawford stating, "Thompson family still inquiring about their son may require some extra motivation to help them progress." The reply from Officer Paul Henderson was equally chilling, having already spread the word through informants that the family is uncooperative. The presence of law enforcement ought to generate sufficient societal pressure to maintain their silence. Messages uncovered that Malik Thompson's family had endured a relentless campaign of harassment aimed at obstructing them from in their quest for justice following their son's murder. The sheer cruelty displayed was breathtaking, exploiting the community's fear of police retaliation to isolate grieving parents and shield the officers involved. Federal prosecutors had initiated the groundwork for RICO charges, viewing Crawford's network as a criminal enterprise that had exploited their legal framework. Positions of enforcement are being exploited to perpetrate continuous violations of the civil rights of minority citizens, with the potential for maximum penalties looming. Under federal civil rights statutes, life sentences may be imposed on the most serious offenders. But hold on, there's more. Further evidence remains undiscovered. The investigation's reach broadened once more as financial audits uncovered that multiple officers had been accepting payments from private security firms and bail bond enterprises in return for. In certain neighborhoods, the act of generating arrests has taken a notable turn, with Crawford alone amassing over $200,000 in undisclosed funds. Payments spanning 5 years are effectively being funded by private entities to facilitate criminalization. Court documents revealed that Crawford had entered into agreements with 3 distinct private companies that gained from elevated arrest rates in minority neighborhoods. His methodical focus on black teenagers was not merely, it was a profitable venture that drove him to ruin the futures of young individuals for his own gain. Judge Mitchell contemplated these revelations from her chambers, experiencing a blend of satisfaction and intrigue. Horror washed over her as the full extent of Crawford's crimes came to light. The man she had faced in her courtroom was not merely, he had been a racist cop, the leader of a criminal enterprise that transformed police badges into mere licenses for extortion and murder. The corruption escalated to heights that appeared nearly unbelievable. Yet, every fragment of the evidence had been carefully recorded and confirmed by federal investigators who recognized that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary proof. The forthcoming revelation will transform everything you believed. Became aware of this case 6 months following Crawford's violent assault in Courtroom 7A, the federal prosecutions were administering justice with meticulous accuracy. Crawford himself faced conviction on 17 federal charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the judge explicitly highlighting the severity of his assault on. Judge Mitchell exhibited a complete dismissal of the rule of law and the principles of constitutional governance. Captain Morrison was handed a 45-year sentence for conspiracy and civil rights violations, while Lieutenant Hayes faced a different fate with his own sentencing: 3 decades for his involvement in concealing homicides and coercing witnesses. The verdicts reverberated through the legal community. Enforcement communities across the nation are declaring that institutional racism will no longer find refuge in. Amidst the backdrop of administrative indifference, justice was finally being served. Yet, the most remarkable aspect was yet to come, as Mrs. Ella Laner Thompson Malik's mother had emerged as the face of the federal civil rights case. Her unwavering dignity and relentless pursuit of justice serve as a beacon of inspiration for families facing similar struggles. From every corner of the nation to share their personal narratives of police misconduct. Stood outside the federal courthouse after Crawford's sentencing, she conveyed a quiet authority reminiscent of someone who had turned personal tragedy into a catalyst for systemic change. "My son Malik was murdered by a man who believed that the lives of black children held no value," she declared, her voice resonating through the crowd of supporters assembled to bear witness to this momentous occasion. Yet, his passing was not without purpose, as it may spare other mothers from similar grief. Through the lens of this suffering, the federal investigation ultimately uncovered 47 families whose children had been subjected to the machinations of Crawford's network, each obtaining significant financial settlements, yet more crucially, an official recognition that their children had been betrayed by the very system designed to safeguard them. Kesha, at 16, Williams is flourishing in her junior year of high school, emerging as a passionate advocate for police reform and youth empowerment. Her experience in Judge Mitchell's courtroom had imparted a profound lesson: that voicing truth to authority was not merely creating change is possible but essential, Kesha remarked during a speech, reflecting on her past fears of police officers. "A youth leadership conference revealed to me that dedicated officers share our vision for safe communities where all individuals are afforded dignity and respect. The corrupt officers were wary of us, aware that we held the power to unveil their misdeeds, their deceptions." The subsequent changes reshaped everything. Judge Mitchell had turned down numerous offers to opt to stay in criminal court, where she could persist in safeguarding vulnerable youth, rather than ascending to higher courts. From systemic abuse, her chambers emerged as a beacon of judicial activism, with judges from various regions of the nation looking to her for insight on recognizing and addressing institutional racism in. The Riverside County Police Department experienced a thorough transformation under federal oversight, leading to the establishment of their own courtrooms. Oversight under new leadership has led to revised training protocols and community engagement, accountability measures that functioned as a model for departments across the nation. The camera policies underwent revision to avert the technical difficulties that had previously facilitated Crawford's crimes, concealed for years. Yet, the most profound transformation was undoubtedly cultural, an acknowledgement that remaining silent in the presence of injustice could no longer be tolerated, that individuals of integrity bore a moral duty to speak truth to power, no matter the personal cost. Maria Rodriguez, the administrator who safeguarded the evidence that led to Crawford's downfall, was elevated to the position of Director of Court Security, and emerged as a national authority on safeguarding judicial processes from corrupt law enforcement. Her bravery in revealing Crawford's misdeeds had spared numerous other families from enduring the plight faced by the Thompson family. In the wake of tragedy, what unfolded next will rekindle your belief in justice. The memorial, the garden, planted outside the courthouse in memory of Malik Thompson, had transformed into a gathering place for families who had, in the shadow of lost children to police violence, a sanctuary emerged, a space where grief could be shared and hope could be nurtured. Mrs. Thompson tended to this fragile garden of emotions. The roses, lovingly planted in her son's honor, brought her solace, as she found peace in the understanding that his passing had sparked transformations that would safeguard the legacy for those yet to come. Detective Lisa Chen, the Officer of Internal Affairs, the individual whose clandestine recordings had yielded vital evidence, was designated as the inaugural Civilian Director of Police, the responsibility to examine allegations of misconduct free from police influence. Her appointment signified a pivotal transformation in the accountability of police departments. The consequences of Crawford's exposure reached well beyond Riverside County, igniting inspiration in many. Federal investigations spanning 12 additional states culminated in the conviction of more than 300 corrupt officers who had been acting with a comparable audacity. The ultimate metamorphosis will render you utterly astonished 2 years following the strike that, resonating through the corridors of justice, Judge Diane Mitchell found herself graced by an unforeseen guest in her chambers, Mrs. Eleanor Thompson rapped gently on the door, cradling a modestly wrapped package in her hands, and adorned with the serene countenance of one who had discovered resolution after enduring years of sorrow and strife. Judge Mitchell, Mrs. Thompson said, settling into the chair across from the desk. I wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude for your bravery in standing up when it truly mattered. Malik's death has finally brought this to light. Significance, as you denied Crawford the opportunity to conceal himself behind his badge. The package held a framed photograph of Malik Thompson stood at his high school graduation, a smile gracing his face, radiating the bright optimism of a young man who believed in the possibilities ahead. The future brimmed with boundless possibilities. Beneath the photograph lay an engraved plaque, reading, "Justice delayed is not justice denied when good people decide to speak truth to power." Judge Mitchell felt tears welled in her eyes as she gazed at Malik's face, recognizing in his expression a shared dignity and flicker of hope that she had observed in numerous young individuals who had come before her in the courtroom, seeking refuge from a system that frequently let them down. The legacy that arose will motivate future generations. The Crawford case had transformed into a pivotal moment in the annals of American civil rights history, examined in law schools and police academies as a quintessential illustration of how institutional racism functions in complex ways, yet it can be dismantled through unwavering courage and thorough documentation, as highlighted by the judge. Mitchell's steadfastness in the face of Crawford's brutality illustrated that the rule of law could triumph over the rule of force emerged when good people chose not to remain silent. The federal consent decree overseeing Riverside, the county police department, emerged as a beacon of police reform across the nation, implementing measures that mandate the consideration of implicit bias, fostering a culture of community oversight, and ensuring transparent investigations into misconduct complaints are essential. Examining crime rates in previously affected areas reveals important insights. The prevalence of over-policed neighborhoods had indeed diminished as the bond of trust between the community and law enforcement was restored through accountability, and respect have become paramount. Most importantly, the young people in Crawford's former patrol area no longer lived in the dread of interactions with law enforcement had come to a close, marking the end of the systematic oppression faced by black youth, supplanted by community policing frameworks that prioritized safeguarding over coercion. Yet, the most formidable, the change was subtle yet profoundly transformative. Kesha Williams had graduated as valedictorian of her high school class. She earned a full scholarship to study criminal justice at Howard University. In her graduation speech, she reflected on the pivotal day in Courtroom 7A that had transformed everything. Her comprehension of power and justice revealed to me that courage is not the lack of fear, Kesha expressed to the crowd that filled the room. Auditorium: courage is doing what is right, even in the face of fear. Judge Mitchell demonstrated to me that a single individual willing to stand up can change everything. This is the essence of the scholarship fund established in memory of Malik Thompson, offered educational opportunities to more than 200 young individuals who had suffered from police misconduct, turning trauma into a chance for growth and guaranteeing that Crawford's victims could construct the destinies he had sought to obliterate. Judge Mitchell maintained Malik's photograph on her desk as a constant reminder. A reminder that the pursuit of justice demands not only professional skill but also personal bravery. Each case that presented itself before her, the bench presented a pivotal moment, a chance to either continue the cycle of systemic failures or to foster an environment conducive to healing and accountability. On the courthouse steps, Miss Thompson once stood alone, her voice a resolute demand for justice. For her slain son now organized regular gatherings where community members collaborated with law enforcement to foster trust and thwart the corruption that had thrived in shadows. The ultimate lesson transformed everything. As evening descended upon the courthouse, a place where so much healing had taken root, Judge Mitchell readied herself to depart for home, where the husband awaited, dinner prepared, eager to share tales of his day spent saving lives as a trauma surgeon. The red mark from Crawford still fresh in his memory. The assault had long since faded. Yet, the memory of that moment lingers, when she opted for dignity instead of retaliation, when she allowed Crawford's violence revealed itself rather than confronting it with her own, remaining as vivid as ever. He was serving his life sentence in federal prison, his days spent in protective custody, isolated from the general population. A community that encompassed numerous young men whose futures he had shattered through wrongful arrests and deceitful actions. His name had become a byword for police corruption, serving as a cautionary tale. Instructed to every new recruit is the tale of what transpired when officers neglected their solemn vow to serve and protect. Yet, Judge Mitchell's legacy stood apart. Her name resonated with reverence in communities that had come to trust in the justice she embodied. The system once more within law schools, where students delved into her methods for tackling institutional racism, and in courtrooms where other judges summoned the courage to confront corruption instead of facilitating it, the lesson was clear, yet transformative. At times, the most profound reaction to animosity is merely resisting the weight of despair, remaining steadfast until the truth prevails, and opting to remain in the realm where the work holds significance, rather than pursuing personal gain or security. Certain victories are achieved not through strength, yet it was the subtle bravery of choosing to stand firm when retreating would have been simpler that defined Judge Diane Mitchell. Selected to remain in criminal court, and in doing so had reminded a whole nation of what justice resembles when it stands firm. The courthouse lights faded into darkness, marking the close of yet another day in the relentless pursuit of justice, yet the endeavor would continue anew, tomorrow and the day after that, and for countless days to come, as long as children required a guardian to shield them from those who. Crawford's kick was meant to stifle Judge Mitchell, to assert dominance and remind her of her position, had replaced countless others. Instead, it transformed into the moment when his whole universe, the edifice of deceit and brutality, crumbled as the very system he had tainted ultimately revolted, confronting him with the unwavering might of federal legislation. If you're a young individual observing this, keep in mind that Kesha, at the tender age of 15, Williams confronted Crawford's intimidation. Parents, take note, Mrs. Thompson never faltered, ceased to seek justice for her son. If you hold a position of authority, bear in mind that Judge Mitchell could have taken an uncomplicated route, yet opted to struggle for justice. The key takeaway from this narrative is that transformation starts with one individual reached a breaking point. Crawford believed his badge granted him immunity, convinced that his racism was beyond reproach. Institutional silence would serve as a shield. He believed that violence could mute those who dared to question his authority. He was mistaken on every account, for he came across individuals who grasped that certain principles are worth fighting for, no matter the price. Today, Malik Thompson's name resonates. Inscribed on a monument honoring civil rights heroes outside the Riverside County Courthouse, Kesha Williams is pursuing her studies too. Mrs. Thompson heads a foundation dedicated to offering legal assistance to families aspiring to become a civil rights attorney. In her unwavering pursuit of justice against police misconduct, Judge Mitchell remains steadfast in her commitment to safeguarding vulnerable youth. Systematic abuse. Crawford spends his days in a 6x8 cell, enveloped by the consequences of choices that felt so significant in the moment of their making, yet revealed themselves to be nothing more than the frantic measures of a diminutive figure who mistook brutality for power and righteousness. It may not always progress swiftly, yet when determined individuals persist, it inexorably advances toward truth, Crawford mused. His badge granted him a sense of invincibility, yet he was mistaken. Judge Mitchell revealed the truth to us. At times, the most profound reaction to animosity lies in the steadfastness of not allowing it to shatter one's spirit. This tale resonated with you. Consider subscribing and sharing it so that others may experience it too. Dignity remains timeless. What moment has had the greatest impact on you? Share your thoughts with us. The remarks linger, awaiting the next tale that demonstrates the triumph of truth.